Jerry Seinfeld.
What up, Seinfeld? What up? Can we get a free Palestine? Can we get a free Palestine? Come on, give us one free Palestine.
It doesn't exist.
Shut up! 50 years ago, you had your upside down with a fucking fork up your ass!
I'm going to use this to just find out what's in the quality of your heart. I can't tell. Which side should I be on?
It's on the left side.
Not this side? No. Not this side.
I was at a comedy club trying to do my act, and I got heckled, and I took it badly and went into a rage.
Is a force who has been creating excellent content for like a really long time, and she is doing her best work yet, I think, in Veep, and she crushes it constantly.
Hey there, I'm Hairy Neck Sarah, and I'll be your mascot during this video. What's that? I'm not a neck, huh? That's the interesting thing about perspective. You've got to look a little closer to see the truth.
Perspective is a funny thing. You can watch somebody on television for years and slowly convince yourself that you know them. Not literally, obviously. I don't think Kramer is going to burst through my front door. But when you've watched hundreds of episodes of somebody smiling, joking, dating, eating cereal, and arguing about parking spaces, some part of your brain starts mixing the actor with the character. Jerry Seinfeld is probably the best example. On Seinfeld, Jerry was strangely comforting. George was permanently having a nervous breakdown. Kramer moved through life like he'd just been released from some kind of experimental facility. Elaine could destroy a relationship because somebody used the wrong punctuation mark, and Jerry was just Jerry, standing in the middle smiling at these lunatics. Then you leave the world of the sitcom and start looking at the actual lives of the actors. And suddenly things get considerably messier. One member of the cast had one of the most infamous racist meltdowns ever captured on video.
You can talk, your brain now! What was it called for? It's not called for you, they're on my ass, you cheat mother. You guys have been talking and talking and talking!
Another recently apologized for rubbing a mobile phone across the breasts of a 17-year-old Courtney Stodden during a comedy sketch. Jerry himself once dated a 17-year-old high school student when he was 39. And more recently, he has become one of Hollywood's most outspoken supporters of Israel, culminating in a bizarre street encounter where somebody asked him to say "Free Palestine," and Jerry responded,
It doesn't exist.
Meanwhile, Julia Louis-Dreyfus appears to have spent the last 30 years minding her own business and winning Emmys. So today I thought we would do something that Seinfeld itself already did in 1998. We're putting the cast on trial. And before we destroy everybody's childhood, I should probably admit something. I love Seinfeld. I've been watching this show for around 15 years. And unlike some of these retrospective videos where somebody suddenly discovers that a beloved old program was secretly terrible, I still think Seinfeld is brilliant. Maybe even more brilliant now, because one of the strangest things about the program is how well its characters survived.
Georgie Porgy! Georgie Porgy! I don't care what anyone says. He's my Andrew Tate.
George Costanza is one of the greatest losers ever put on television, and I mean that lovingly. Before Kevin Smith gave us the dead-end Workers or Clerks, and around the same era that Richard Linklater was making Slacker, Larry David and Jason Alexander gave television an incredible version of the stalled adult.
You had to interfere, didn't you?
Take the... I don't know if you're happy. You know, it's sitting on it, and then it's the explosion.
You had to do it, didn't you?
George wants everything. He wants money, a career, women, respect, a nice apartment. He wants people to believe he's an architect, despite the small problem that he is not an architect. But most importantly, George constantly feels like the life he was promised hasn't arrived. That's what still makes him relatable. George isn't simply lazy, he's disappointed. He looks around and sees other people getting married, moving forward and becoming successful, while he's unemployed and moving back into his parents' house.
Oh my God.
That joke hits differently now. Young adults today talk constantly about living with their parents longer, terrible job markets, rent, careers that don't seem to lead anywhere, and reaching 30 without feeling remotely like the adults they imagined they'd become.
If you're a man 30 plus and you stay with your parents, it's okay. What you thought was going to be getting your ass about something? No, it's completely okay. Do not feel embarrassed if you're a man 30 plus and you live with your parents. Now, even though it might seem embarrassing, it's actually not. If you're a man with a plan, you're good to go. If you're a man sitting on your ass, that gives you that feeling of embarrassment.
In recent US Census data, fewer than a quarter of Americans aged 25 to 34 had simultaneously reached 4 traditional milestones: living independently, working, marrying, and having children, compared with almost half in 1975. George Costanza would thrive on Reddit. He'd be in 12 different subreddits explaining why his boss is a narcissist. Then somebody would discover he'd been pretending to be a marine biologist. That's why I don't want the scandals surrounding these actors to completely swallow what they achieved. Jason Alexander was incredible. Michael Richards was incredible. Julia was incredible. Even Jerry, who freely admitted acting wasn't exactly his strongest skill, had a warmth that helped hold the whole thing together. The program deserves its reputation.
So if you're scared, if you haven't got the stomach for this, let's get it out right now.
Exhibit A: Jason Alexander and the 17-year-old. In July 2026, Courtney Stodden brought attention back to an extremely strange comedy sketch filmed in 2012.
What I care about is the quality of your heart. So I have a special app here on my iPhone, and if I may, I'm going to use this to just find out what's in the quality of your heart. I can't tell, which side should I be on?
It's on the left side.
Not this side?
At the time, Stodden was 17, Jason Alexander was in his early 50s, and the concept apparently involved Alexander rubbing his mobile phone across Stodden's chest while making jokes about there being no reception in her head, but plenty of reception in her breasts.
I just read about Courtney Stodden calling out Jason Alexander rubbing that phone against her girls. And I mean, you can see that he was doing it and making jokes. She was 17. And all you women out there, I am sure, like me, you have experienced, not now, but when I was younger, it happened all the time. The older man would go in for the hug and he would do that side thing on your girls. And you're like, it's so innocent enough, but you know what happened that you can't even call it out.
Alexander was not merely an actor who wandered onto set without knowing what was happening. He was also credited as a writer on the sketch, and the footage looks particularly strange today because Courtney Stodden's situation was already deeply controversial. At 16, Stodden had married actor Doug Hutchison. He was 51.
When I watch it, it just brings back so much trauma that I've tried to run from for so many years. So I'm sorry if I'm a little all over the place, but it's a lot. I mean, I'm healing in real time. And yeah, it's crazy to hear. You know, I'm walking down the aisle at 16 years old to a man who was older than my father weekly. It's just, it's insane to me. I mean, I would, you know, I'm physically shaking because it's real life. It's not just a movie, like you said.
Yes, 16 and 51. The marriage had parental approval, became tabloid entertainment, and turned Stodden into a national punchline while they were still a minor. That is the part that bothers me more as I've gotten older. because there were adults everywhere: parents, agents, producers, television executives, comedians, journalists. And yet somehow the teenager became the joke. Then along comes Jason Alexander and another production where Stodden's body becomes part of the gag.
What was your big break?
My big break. My 52-year-old husband. I don't know if you're familiar with my story. I was 16 years old when I married a 50-year-old man.
Wow.
Watching it now, it's hard not to wonder, did anybody in Hollywood ever look at Courtney Stodden and think maybe the 17-year-old isn't the weird person in this situation? Because this is something that keeps coming up when you look at entertainment history. Hollywood loves young people. Young actors are attractive, marketable, cheap, exciting, but Hollywood has not always been particularly interested in protecting them. And that connects back to my previous video about what happens to artists after the industry has extracted whatever it wants from them. Courtney Stodden wasn't treated like some vulnerable teenager surrounded by adults. They were content. And years later, Stodden looked back at that sketch and essentially asked why everybody thought this was okay. To Jason Alexander's credit, he didn't run from it, he apologized. He called the sketch inappropriate and expressed regret about participating in it. Stodden responded that words were welcome, but suggested Alexander do something tangible by supporting Unchained at Last, an organization fighting child marriage. Alexander subsequently donated $15,000. That makes this story more interesting to me, because normally internet scandals end with person did bad thing, everybody screams for 3 days, we find another person, repeat. But what happens when somebody actually says, yeah, that was fucked up, I'm sorry, and then puts money behind the apology? Jason can't climb into a time machine and slap the phone out of his own hand. He can only acknowledge it. But Courtney Stodden, being 17, leads us rather conveniently to another member of the cast, because apparently 17 was a surprisingly eventful age in the extended Seinfeld universe. Jerry's girlfriend.
Seinfeld's girl is 17 and innocent with double D's. He saw those breasts and flipped his lid for a real young busty high school kid.
Howard Stern? Gotta love that lanky bastard.
In 1993, Jerry Seinfeld met Shoshana Lonstein in Central Park. Jerry was at the height of his fame. Seinfeld was becoming enormous. Money was coming in. Everybody knew his face. And Shoshana, she was 17, still in high school. Jerry was 39. They went on to date for around 4 years. Contemporary reporting indicates her family knew about and approved of the relationship, and Lonstein herself has not publicly characterized her relationship with Jerry as some traumatic experience.
Jerry Seinfeld, when he was 39, dating a 17-year-old. How much of this have you heard about?
I do remember specifically him having no shame. She was in high school. You could have been her father.
Creepy details about their relationship. Jerry Seinfeld would show up at her parents' apartment where she lived with her 15-year-old brother in a limousine and whisk her away for dates. Like, how does that not go through your head? You're driving to her parents. She lives with her parents.
Right. She's living at home. She's in school. Like, I have no idea. He was just like, hi, mom and dad, I'm going to take your little girl out for a day, even though, we're the same age. It had to have been they were starstruck, or in a lot of situations like these, like Steven Tyler, Julia Holcomb, the situation where the parents paid. Did they get paid? Were they offered incentives? Were they bribed?
Jerry wasn't 22. He wasn't 25. He was approaching 40. He had already had an entire adult life by the time Shoshana was finishing high school. And perhaps the strangest part is that this wasn't some secret that has only recently been uncovered. They were photographed together. They went to events. People magazine covered the relationship. Everybody knew. The story has simply developed a second life because younger people keep discovering it online. A photograph resurfaces, somebody learns the ages, and another generation collectively goes, wait, Jerry did what?
Well, since we're going back in time, we need to talk about Jerry Seinfeld and his love of young things. Now, this picture right here is Jerry Seinfeld. At the time, he was 39 years old, and Shoshana Lonstein was 17. Now, this was back in 1993. And yeah, it was legal for the state of New York but so is wearing socks with your sandals.
The story was already circulating heavily again in 2024 after protests at Seinfeld's Duke commencement appearance, and it continues resurfacing in social media discussions about his past. And this is where perspective becomes important again. I don't buy the lazy explanation that, well, it was the 90s, nobody cared. People absolutely thought it was weird, but we now have a much bigger cultural conversation about age differences when one person is extremely young. People talk about power imbalance, fame, money, experience, whether somebody who is technically old enough to consent is actually equipped to navigate a relationship with a famous person more than 20 years older than them. Younger people in particular seem obsessed with this stuff, sometimes too obsessed. The internet can see a 24-year-old dating a 30-year-old and suddenly somebody is drawing a diagram. But 17 and 39 doesn't exactly require advanced mathematics, and it creates another strange collision between Jerry Seinfeld and the modern audience, because Jerry has spent the last few years complaining that younger generations are too sensitive, that political correctness has damaged comedy, that people are afraid of offending each other.
Nothing really affects comedy. People always need it. They need it so badly, and they don't get it. It used to be you would go home at the end of the day, most people would go, oh, Cheers is on, oh, MASH is on, oh, Mary Tyler Moore is on, All in the Family's on. You just expected, there'll be some funny stuff we can watch on TV tonight. Well, guess what? Where is it? This is the result of the extreme left and PC crap and people worrying so much about offending other people. When you write a script and it goes into 4 or 5 different hands, committees, groups, here's our thought about this joke, well, that's the end of your comedy.
And meanwhile, those same younger viewers are digging through Jerry's life going, brother, why were you dating somebody who had homework?
Why is it that girlfriend parents are the same age as you? What is the matter? A girlfriend's life revolves around home. They got homework, homeroom, and they want to run away from home and live with their 38-year-old celebrity boyfriend. I'm going to 2 proms. That's 2 proms too many for someone 2 times the age of his girlfriend, plus 2 twice. Please check out my new TV show, Comedians in Cars Teaching Their Girlfriends How to Drive for the Road Test.
There is something almost poetic about it. Jerry thinks the audience changed. The audience thinks Jerry needs investigating. And then things get even stranger, because Jerry's current controversies don't require anybody digging through 30-year-old magazines.
Jerry, can I get a selfie?
Sure.
Free Palestine!
I don't care about Palestine.
That's sad.
Over the last few years, Jerry Seinfeld has become increasingly outspoken in his support for Israel. Supporting Israel is obviously not a crime. Being Jewish and feeling a connection with Israel is not a scandal. And I'm not interested in pretending everybody has to agree with me politically before I can watch their sitcom. But in June 2026, Jerry was approached outside Madison Square Garden and asked to say, "Free Palestine." Jerry laughed, then replied, "It doesn't exist," and walked away. It's such a bizarre clip because it is delivered with that familiar Jerry Seinfeld energy, that same little grin, that dismissive rhythm, except instead of discussing soup or somebody eating peas one at a time, he's dismissing Palestine. Whatever your position on Israel and Palestine, saying Palestine doesn't exist carries considerably more weight than simply saying you support Israel.
He's leaving the Knick game. Someone was like, can we get a free Palestine? He's like, it doesn't exist. It's like, you ghoul. These people are evil, truly sick. I hate to be so graphic about it, but like the scene, I mentioned I had seen Terminator 2 in theaters, and that's that scene early on in the movie when the robot is like stepping on this wall of human skulls. Like, that's what people are doing when they say things like Palestine doesn't exist. You're just trying to erase a people, you're trying to erase lives, you're trying to erase identity.
Palestinians obviously exist. Palestinian identity exists. Millions of people identify themselves that way, and Jerry's comment immediately generated backlash, including criticism from public figures such as Congresswoman Ilhan Omar.
I think Jerry Seinfeld has been really horrific human being and an example when it comes to talking about the reality of the genocide that Israel has carried out. And I think when people prioritize their own people in the interest of harming others. It's very dangerous.
This is where Jerry differs from Jason Alexander. Jason is dealing with something from 2012 and saying, I shouldn't have done that. Michael Richards, as we'll get to, has spent almost 20 years regretting what he did. Jerry seems pretty comfortable, and that's his right. But it means viewers have to decide what they think of him themselves, which becomes increasingly strange because the fictional Jerry remains so bloody likable. I can put on an old episode right now and completely forget about all this. He's still Jerry.
I know why we have reservations.
I don't think you do.
If Jerry's controversies developed slowly, Michael Richards managed to compress his entire scandal into one astonishing night. November 2006, the Laugh Factory in Los Angeles.
Wait a minute, where's he going? Oh, it's a big threat. That's how you get back in the man.
Richards is doing stand-up. Some audience members heckle him. He gets angry. And something inside Michael Richards apparently decides tonight is the night. Richards launches into one of the most infamous celebrity meltdowns ever recorded. He repeatedly calls black audience members the N-word. He invokes lynching. The audience turns on him. Somebody films it. And because this was 2006, when viral video was becoming powerful, but celebrities hadn't quite learned that every idiot in the room was now carrying a camera, the footage exploded online. It is still genuinely uncomfortable to watch. Not because Kramer said it. Kramer isn't real, but that distinction was difficult for audiences because Michael Richards had spent nearly a decade being one of the most lovable weirdos on television.
50 years ago, we'd have you upside down with a fork up your... Hi, we're going to be talking about Michael Richards' infamous rant, and I'm not going to be going into that much detail about it, but I was thinking about it recently because I saw, like, you know how people do those jolly edits where they'll take, like, infamous moments and they'll replace all of, like, the slurs and the bad words with, like, ho 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 and Merry Christmas. I saw one of the Michael Richards rants and I was like, damn, like, I forgot how bad it was. And you have to think about this. This happened in 2006, which means that, like, he literally did it the exact same year that YouTube was launched, meaning it was too late for there not to be cell phone recordings of comedy shows, but too early for it to be alt-right YouTube, where he could have gotten, like, bank off of being super racist. But people were doing blackface on TV, like Jimmy Fallon, Sarah Silverman, like Tropic Thunder wouldn't come out for another few years. Like, people were just cool with that shit at the time. And he said something so racist that he had to retire his career forever.
Kramer was almost like a cartoon. The hair, the entrances, the physical comedy, the way Richards could make his entire skeleton participate in a joke. Then suddenly you're watching the same face screaming racist abuse. And Richards knew immediately that he destroyed something. He appeared on Letterman shortly afterwards to apologize.
Hello, hi.
How you doing?
I'm not doing too good.
Yeah. You were actually being heckled, or were they just talking and disturbing the act?
That was going on too.
Uh-huh. And did you?
I know. I mean, hearing your audience laugh, you know, and it's. I'm not even sure that this is where I should be addressing the situation. I've already heard you make some jokes about it, and that's okay, you know. But I'm really busted up over this, and I'm very, very sorry to those people in the audience, the blacks, the Hispanics, the whites, everyone that was there that took the brunt of that anger and hate and rage and how it came through. And
it's one of the weirdest moments in late night television history. Years later, Richards said he was immediately sorry, described the incident as horrific, and said he'd largely withdrawn from public life rather than trying to force a comeback.
I know you've done a lot of work since then. How are you different today than you were on that day?
Oh, the difference. Probably more aware of myself. Anger. Looking at it very closely. It's something that's always with us, certainly with me. Not as horrible as it was 18 years ago. Anger had a hold of me. And I
I canceled myself out.
Again, I arrive at the same uncomfortable question. What are we supposed to do with somebody who genuinely regrets something? Richards cannot unsay it. The video isn't going anywhere. Anybody discovering Seinfeld in 2040 will be approximately 6 Google searches away from seeing Kramer scream the N-word. But I also can't pretend Michael Richards wasn't brilliant. He was. Both things are true. What he did was disgusting, and he gave one of the greatest physical comedy performances in television history. That's the problem with people. They're inconveniently complicated.
Yo, fried plantain. What about Julia? Is this just the man-hating hour? Come on, she's been famous for like 40 years. I know she's done some crazy shit. Right?
Compared with the other 3 main cast members, Julia Louis-Dreyfus appears to have escaped without anything remotely comparable hanging over her public reputation, which is hilarious because Elaine may actually be the most terrifying character on the program. Elaine is insane. She shoves people, she screams, she destroys relationships over tiny annoyances. She can be shallow, vindictive, and incredibly selfish. And Julia somehow makes you love her anyway.
I thought. You thought? We're gonna die in the dark. I knew it. We're gonna die. Get a hold of yourself.
I also think she brought something to Seinfeld that the program desperately needed. Jerry was relatively calm, George was neurotic, Kramer was physically insane. Elaine could do all 3 depending on what was happening. And unlike a lot of actors trapped forever by one gigantic sitcom, Julia went on to build another massive television legacy with Veep. She also publicly disagreed with Jerry's complaints about political correctness in 2024.
You know, talking about Veep, it does make me wonder about how hard it is nowadays to be funny about politics. And you are very political. You even hosted the DNC in 2020. One of the things that people say that they like about Trump is that he's funny. And maybe they mean that he's entertaining in a shocking and irreverent way. I'm looking at your face. You clearly don't think that he's funny.
No.
But one thing that people do say on the other side about the Democratic Party is that it's become too puritanical. Your former co-star Jerry Seinfeld recently made news for talking about political correctness in comedy. And so I'm just wondering, as a famous comedian yourself, what you think about that.
I think that if you look back on comedy and drama both, let's say 30 years ago, through the lens of today, you might find bits and pieces that don't age well. And I think to have antenna about sensitivities is not a bad thing. And it doesn't mean that all comedy goes out the window as a result. When I hear people starting to complain about political correctness, and I understand why people might push back on it, but to me, that's a red flag.
So after careful consideration, the court has reached its verdict. Julia Louis-Dreyfus may leave. And this is where this entire story gets weirdly appropriate, because Seinfeld already ended with the characters being placed on trial. Jerry, George, Elaine, and Kramer had spent 9 seasons being selfish, petty, and indifferent to everybody around them. Then the finale literally brought witnesses from their past into a courtroom to remind them of all the terrible they'd done. People famously had mixed feelings about that ending, but almost 30 years later, we're basically doing the same thing to the actors. Old footage comes back, old relationships come back, old interviews come back. Something that disappeared into a magazine in 1994 can suddenly become a TikTok watched by a 17-year-old in 2026. Nothing stays buried anymore, and I don't actually think that's entirely bad. Jason Alexander's story is probably the clearest example. Courtney Stodden brought something back into public view. Jason looked at it again. He apologized. Then he backed that apology with money for an organization trying to stop child marriage. That's arguably what accountability is supposed to look like. Michael Richards is harder. Some people will never forgive him. I understand why, but after nearly 20 years of public humiliation, withdrawal, and repeated remorse, I don't personally feel any need to pretend his entire existence should be reduced to 3 horrible minutes in 2006. Jerry is different because the debates around him remain alive. His relationship with a 17-year-old looks far more disturbing to many younger viewers than it apparently did to large parts of celebrity culture in the 90s. His comments about Palestine are happening right now, and Jerry doesn't appear remotely interested in apologizing for either the broader worldview behind those controversies or his irritation with the culture criticizing him. Maybe that's why he's the most interesting member of the cast today. Jason Alexander looks backwards. Michael Richards looks backwards. Julia Louis-Dreyfus seems to have peacefully continued with her life.
I'm especially glad to see you tonight. How are you?
I am good.
You're
I
good.
am really good.
Good. You're not just saying that.
No, I'm not just saying that. I'm good. I'm here. I know we have to get this cancer out of the way.
Right,
So
that's right.
bring on the questions.
Jerry Seinfeld is still arguing with the audience, and somehow, after everything, I still love Seinfeld. I'll still laugh when George lies about being an architect. I'll still laugh when Kramer enters a room like somebody fired him out of a cannon. I'll still think Elaine is one of the best sitcom characters ever created. And I'll still enjoy Jerry quietly watching all of them destroy their lives. Knowing what actors have done away from the screen doesn't magically erase what they created on it, but loving the work doesn't require pretending you know or approve of the people who made it either. Maybe that's the real lesson here. Actors borrow our trust from their characters. Sometimes they deserve it, sometimes they don't, and sometimes the safest thing you can do is simply enjoy the show and under absolutely no circumstances Google the cast.
That's the interesting thing about perspective. From one direction, you see 4 beloved television icons. From another, you see 3 defendants and Julia Louis-Dreyfus.